Hello, in this session I will give you a brief overview about the assets that I have built in the last half of a year for this project, for the community. So yeah, I will not talk too much. I will show you the good sides of this asset database, and all these assets are made in the context of building your own countryside image, a farm image. We have a variety of different assets for that, from the technical sides to plants to rocks, and as well as machinery. And the first asset that I want to show you as an example is this windmill. It's an energy generator that I built myself, about 150 meters, 170 on top. I think it could be a nice asset that we can place in the scene. So we will go to other assets. So we are currently in the Asset Maker Additionals, and this file provides mostly procedural assets and smaller assets for propping up the scene. So we had the windmill. We also have a power line. And the great thing about the power line, which is right here, the great thing about the power line is that you can draw them into the scene, and I will show how this works. So it's completely procedural, and we will use it in the tutorial. So the next one that we have is a farm fence. And the great thing is, in USD in general, of course, this is a very heavy procedural to calculate through. So here we have it. And when we move closer to the fence, we also have the ability to change the shaders. So this is a very white one, and yeah, it's kind of new. And we can change the shader, of course, like in all of the USD files that I provide. So you have those underscore nodes, and you can change the values of those. So when I hit a click on the right and it did the primitive, the input RGB, then we would get a new edit material properties node. And here inside, we can change some values, but I have chosen the wrong one. Oh, yeah, my bad. Here we're in the right one. So I provided all these buttons so that we can change material. So when I restart the render, you will see we now have a worn version of it. So it's not that clean, and some of the paint crippled. And yeah, we also have a wood one, of course, so I can change that too. And here we have the wood one. So I tried to get the most out of each asset. And of course, we can also change the exposure. So like something like that. So when I go into this one, here we can change the stub value. Or maybe we should make it a little bit darker. So here you can see we have the ability to change the shading on the fly without the need to rebake the USD files itself. All assets are built with the component builder setup. In the next session, I will show in a very simple example how you can build your own component. And we have also an atmosphere, which is a volume and some tricks to be able to have different densities inside of it. This is completely shader driven So here we use a fractal in combination of a manifold 3D to be able to have different density in the atmosphere. It makes it a little bit more realistic. We have a ruler just for testing positions and scales. We have a sky sphere or sky background. Here I will add more clouds, so this will the area for the clouds. We have a ground material or a ground asset that we can change, but we don't have to use it, just for demonstration how to set up the material itself. So in all of the assets, I heavily use the hex tile manifold system, the new shading tile system for RenderMan. All assets are shaded with llama. So, and here we are able with very few textures to create endless seamless varieties, very natural looking textures. And yeah, we have also a ground material and a field road. The field road is a kind of special one. So maybe I can show you the field road. I really like the field road since I have scanned this road myself. So maybe we should add some light. I have scanned the road myself. It has displacement. Maybe camera is not working like I want currently. Sometimes a bit tricky. So it's heavily with displacement, and especially for assets like this road, we often run into this situation where we have to blend between this road, for example, and between the underlying geometry, the ground, and so on. And so I have implemented a shading system that you might be familiar with in Substance Designer. So I basically used the same method to be able to deform the plane itself. So and even to blend it. So when I go into the edge presence ramp now and go for the spline map, I guess. No, for the ramp colors, I think this was the right one. And when I did the property, you will see that we can change the transparency or the presence in order to make it blend easier between the underlying ground and so on. Because on such an asset which has some form of repeating texture, even when I use the hex tile to scatter the texture, it could happening that it not look good when you have a very harsh edge. And what we also have is we have a displacement ramp. This is something I like really the most. So I can change the displacement on the inside as well as on the outside. So I can move it up and down. So of course we need to restart the render each time when we change the displacement. But as you can see, we are currently here, and now I have moved the sides more up and the insides are more down because of that. And we can also change that. So just maybe we should, when we see both images, you see we are able to deform the mesh only by changing the displacements. So this is really nice and works quite well, even when you cut the street or the road, for example. This is for those assets. I mean, they are self-explaining mostly. We will use it in the tutorial. And I will jump to the next asset. So here I will show you the sprayer again. It's a big one. I will forward this loading phase a bit and we'll say something about that. So The most important thing is when you want to work with those assets, with the source files or with the HIP files itself, and I'm not talking about the resulting USD caches, but when you want to edit those HIP files with all the networks, because the majority of assets are procedurally made, you should have at least 32 gigabytes of RAM. This is heavily important, especially for the trees that I will show in a couple of seconds, hopefully. So here again, once again, this is the 42 UDIM machinery, and maybe that's maybe we need some light, so I will use this one. So I have built this asset completely based on NURBS, and then I converted the NURBS into polygons, refined them, and remeshed them, and yeah, unwrapped them with Rhythm UV. In the workflow, in the asset, you will see how it is possible to bring UVs from Rhythm back as a cache to the file itself without influencing the animation. So in other words, the UVs will stay where they should stay. I've also added some spraying volume in the background. And the nice thing about this, asset is that I have also made some controls for it, so I can turn off the spraying, which will influence, and you will see how this works, which is influencing the asset itself, the USD asset. And I can also change the shader inside if the multi-scattering. This is just simple referencing. And what we can also do, we can turn off the lights and we can move the ladder. Maybe we can, the beams, the spraying beams. So we can change the angle, for example, and the entire network is now calculated. And I tried to make this asset as realistic as possible. So I'm a bit familiar with farming and so on. I'm very interested in farming. And so I built this asset just because, it's a very complicated machine, as well as the entire piston setup and so on. You can look at this, and probably in the first moment you will be shocked about the complexity of this model. So when we go back and when we change those values, I have some hints here into the right height. Also the entire cables moving correctly and staying where they should stay. Fold this entire thing into a transport position, so this could also be animated. And open, close, so we will close this now. And as you can see, it should stay exactly at the holding position. So we can also move the ladder up and down. So now it's down, and this is also working quite nicely. We can also move the legs. The legs are made with KinFX. I'm not entirely happy with KinFX myself, since maybe some of you will be able to properly rig it. I rigged it myself for now. So we can, of course, move the legs and so on. So where is it? Right here. So you have an entire modeling setup with KinFX for each leg. This is the entire beam setup. And I have already baked and cached the majority of modeling action inside here to polydraws. So this is just a form of baking. This makes it easy to store the model data inside of a file or inside of this node. Otherwise, the baking would take a lot longer. So I tried to optimize it as much as possible. So maybe we can move one of these legs. So exactly. So when we move this up or down, you see the pistons are also working right here. So it should work. It's a concept with the legs, but at least for this project, you will be able to pose the machinery like you want. And this entirely asset database is not animated or simulated. It's just for creating nice images for now. So if you want to animate it, you can, yeah, you can like you want, but probably you have to make the asset a bit more animation ready. I think I did the most myself, but if you want to have a specific setup, you should take care of it yourself. So what we also have is we have barley plants. So I will forward this to probably. So here we back in the barley setup. So it's the same. I have included some hints for those barley plants, since here you have to make sure that you don't use nested instances. This is a reason because the pre-translation would skyrocket. So you have to make sure that this is not checked. On the trees, I believe we have checked this on, but on those plants, we uncheck this. So I have the hints inside of the asset, also some form of baking and so on. So this should help you to work faster when you want to populate it with within your shot. Of course, we can also draw all these assets. I will show you in the next section how you can do that. But what we have are so maybe I can stop that because we don't need to see everything. As you can see, we have a circular shape for distributing them. Sometimes you see the assets through the viewport. Sometimes this is not as expected. Probably I had a lot of problems on Linux with USD because driver was not working well with Linux. So those are, I believe, the small ones. So when I start them to render, so you will see we have very, where's the light? Now you see. So those are fresh plants, barley plants, in a very early growth state. And we also have a medium-sized one or a very tall one. I try to make sure that those plants look as much as accurate as possible. So as you can see, I also added a lot of textures, tried to repeat textures in order to save a lot of performance. So when I move out, you see we also have those barley hairs right on top. And yeah, this is a lot of geometry, and I must say I really had some trouble into making it work, finding the right assets, the right way of scattering them. And I think at the moment this is one of the most efficient ones. So I have made some pre-patches, and in the scene we will scatter those patches across the land, and in some areas we can also place some of these assets by hand. So what you will see now is the harvest version, so the final version, and they are looking, yeah, ready to be harvested. So everything about the barley plants. So I will jump right into the next asset. We have some bushes. And when I skip those loading phases, I have to say loading of these assets can take quite a while. So you should have a decent workstation, 32 gigabytes of RAM at least, to be able to bake those USD files. Of course, you can bake some of these steps inside of those files by yourself, making it more efficient. And so I will stop the loading with escape. When you work with those USD files, especially with the subcreate models in those yellow network boxes, make sure you're safe very often. So usually when I'm working with those assets, I save those assets probably almost every 3 to 4 minutes. So yeah, one bush. And of course we have multiple sizes. So also a very small one, a big sized, a medium sized, and a small one. And every time when you probably save the file, I mean before you close the file, you should reset the RenderMan license before you jump into a new render operation, to a new scene. Otherwise, this can lead to a crash like in a couple of minutes ago. So we also have grass. And loading of these grass assets can take really long. So we not just have grass on the ground, we also have grass, other grass, wild grass, and so on. And to load this full asset took about 3 minutes. So on my machine, keep that in mind. And when I start this render, you will see a really lot of geometry. So without any doubt, this was the most hard to build one. But when you baked it out, it works really, really fast. I also included different shading, so you have some darker areas in the grass and some brighter areas. The color for the grass is based on the soil underneath. So I think this looks a bit like the Windows XP starting screen. And you can see we also have some other plants right in here, and they are scattered across the field. Really, really a lot. So I also baked every change out, so you have a placement help also here. This will help you a lot. And I will now move my camera. So, and here we can create a render frame just from that area. And as you can see, it looks really, really realistic. Grass is the most important one because our entire Earth is covered with different forms of grass. So yeah, we have tall grass in different sizes, short grass, and so on. I will move to the next asset. This is a very heavy one. Those are the pine trees. I will forward this too. So here we have loaded the pine trees, and you always will get, at least in Houdini 19, you always will get this error message. This is a normal, it's not even an error, it's a warning you don't need to take care about. So no, don't wonder. So where is everything? Here we are. So we have also some different pine trees, and we have long leaf pine trees. We have some different sizes. We have red pine trees, and we have also red pine trees in different sizes. So this file, the pine trees file, is only for pine trees. And the great thing on those pine trees is that they are not just built fully procedural. So when we look into the network, it's completely created with the tree maker tools that we also use for the plants. And yeah, they have nested instances for all those needles. So when we go back to the baked one, you will be able to have a nice feature. So when I start this render right here, so maybe we should change the lighting a bit. Maybe something like 180. Yeah, maybe we go inside a little bit. So you see all these assets, all these trees have displacements, and it's updating very, very fast. And you have those fruits, those cones, pine cones. And all fruits like apples and other stuff, pine cones and so on, everything is called fruits in my assets. So the structure is mostly the same. And with a prune, we can even deactivate those assets, as you can see right here. And the other nice thing that we can also do is we can even deactivate those roots. So I created roots for each of these trees. You sometimes need those roots when you want to place a ZG tree on a cliff or something like that. I integrated them so that you will be able to use them in something like a correct form on your cliff, but you can also deactivate them. So when I put down another prune, and when I open this geo render setup right in here, we see all the twigs and all this stuff, and of course all the needle groups, not all needles, but the needle groups. And here we have root branches, and when I drag and drop this right in here, you can see we can completely deactivate those roots, make them invisible, or better, deactivate them so that they not get stored in the RAM. And I think this is a nice addition for those big amounts of assets. I can give you an overview right in here. So I will load all the baked USD files now. As you can see, we have for pine trees quite a lot of different versions. And we also have dead versions of those trees where the needles are more brownish or more in the brown colors. And we have tall trees and with a full set of needles, and medium-sized trees with half of the amount of needles. But hopefully the render will start in a couple of seconds. They are really heavy also because of the displacements. We can deactivate displacements, but for demonstration for the quality in the image, I have activated it, and as you can see, all trees have PBR textures, a lot of them, and all trees also have infinite texturing. I use the hex tile method that I also used on the ground to be able to make every bark on each tree completely unique. So there is not one single tree looking like the other, also in terms of the textures. Even when we only use one bark texture for one type of tree. But RenderMan provides the ability to bring a lot of variety into the shading itself, and this is really, really nice. So, and now you see it's rendering a lot faster. So we have very tall ones. I think the largest tree right on the left and top has a true size of around 48 meters. This is the true scope of the real thing. We have that one. We have one which is standing outside, and because it's not inside of the woods, it has all those needles around from the bottom to the top. And the other trees, which only has this wood or this needle crown, is made for those trees which are standing mostly directly into the woods itself. This is because of light intensity and so on, and neighbors, other trees and so on, and so they will lose all the needles on the bottom and try to preserve the entire energy on top. So, and as you can see, I can move closer to one of these trees right now. Maybe a little bit more. And as you can see, when I move closer, this is the full resolution. There are no proxies whatsoever. And yeah, I think they are looking quite nice, especially for distance, for environment rendering. And I try to even make the needles into, or I try to make the proper sizing even for those needles. I read that longleaf pine trees, for example, have needles with a total length of up to 28 centimeters, and this is really long. I don't made them that long, but of course you can do this for your own because you have the entire setup for yourself and can work with them. So, and also here on each tree we have the full access to the materials, and we can change the color correction like I have shown in the previous assets. What we also have, I will not show these spruce trees now. I have also made some willow trees as well as some rocks. I will show you the rocks. I have scanned them with photogrammetry, and I think they are also looking very nicely. And I think we have all the assets to build some nice images, or at least one for the tutorial. So here we have it, of course, the usual error message, send future errors to console. And here we have one of those rocks. They are also baked, and here we can also choose the variant. So here we have one of the rocks that I have scanned. Of course, I made sure with Substance that each of those rocks have some form of similar look and so on. So of course you can change the entire coloring of those rocks. So, but it's mostly texture driven. So maybe we can look into this one. So we have an exposure value on top, and yeah, like in the other assets. So I think we can even change the, where is it? The, yeah, we can do color correction. So as you can see, you can make it look more dark. And this is happening with the USD files, so this is not rebaking. I have also used some occlusion to have some color blending on the ground. So each time the rock is hitting or coming close to other objects, it will turn a bit in coloring. So we can also change the stop values like here. So as you can see, oh, this was not correct. So we have to use this one, new node to edit primitive rocks material rock exposure top. So this should work. And when I do this, yeah, as you can see, it has some influence on some of the some portions of the shader, but of course you don't need to use those parameters. You can also change the material entirely, so you can drop down and edit material network right in here, activate, and then you can drag and drop the rock into this material path and can load the entire shading network. And when you dive down, you see what I did. And here, of course, you can also change those values, something like that. I think maybe this way of doing those changes with the edit material is a more convenient one, better for most users to understand. So we can change this, change color or whatever. So it's totally up to you. It's non-destructive, so you can even delete that again. And I will see you in the next chapter. And in this chapter, I will talk about how you can bake those assets to the layout asset gallery. I already did that. And how you can place them in your scene with those layout tools. And I will also cover a way to scatter them like in the old days with a copy to point as an instance. This is quite good for heavy woods. I will do this in the next tutorial. See you. Bye.